come to one of the most difficult questions in the entire National 5 2015 physics question paper, and this is question 7b. Really hard to get 3 marks here because there are so many pitfalls. Let's just have a reminder of what the question is about. Previously in the question, we were able to work out the resultant force acting on the ship when there were 2 forces acting at right angles. Worked out the direction of the resultant force, which was an angle of 37 degrees, and worked out the acceleration of the ship. So this is a kind of separate question in a way. It doesn't necessarily relate to the other 3 questions in question number 7. Explain with the aid of a label diagram why the ship floats. So let's start and we'll draw a label diagram. So I'm just going to draw a box here to represent the ship, and we'll put in some text just so that people know that this is the ship. And then we're going to add the 2 forces. Now there are 2 forces acting on this ship, and the key thing is that these 2 forces are balanced, and that's ultimately why the ship floats. So I'm going to draw in these 2 forces. There's a downward force and there is an upward force. And the key thing is, well, what do we call these forces? So I'm going to give some options as to what we can call these 2 forces. Probably the best name for the downward force is the weight, and that's what I would use to call it. You could call it the weight of the ship, or anything like that. But one thing you must not do is call it the weight of the ship acting on the water. The key thing here is that the forces act on the ship; they do not act on the water. So if you were to say something like the force acting down on the water, then you wouldn't get the mark for the downward force. You might also be tempted to write something like this: gravity. And gravity is definitely incorrect. So we cannot use gravity. Best thing to use is just weight downward. Okay. And then the more challenging part is, what is the upward force called? Now there's a number of things you could use. You could say it's upthrust, and that would be a perfectly acceptable name for it. You could say buoyancy force. Let's see if we can get buoyancy right, spelled right. But you would have to call it a buoyancy force. If you just called it buoyancy, that wouldn't be sufficient. Or you could call it the force of the water on the ship. So again, there's a number of different options for the name of the upward force. But of course, as I reminded you earlier, you cannot say it's the force of the ship on the water. You must talk about the fact that this force is acting on the ship. So doing that will give you 2 marks, and your final mark will be for writing that these forces are balanced. You could also, of course, say the forces are equal and opposite. And that would give you the 3rd mark. Either of those 2 statements would be fine. So as you can see, lots of potential areas for getting marks incorrectly, or not getting full 3 marks. But hopefully that explanation has been helpful for you.